Hi everyone. This talk presents the paper Route Hijacking and Denial of Service in Off-Chain Networks. This is my joint work with Professor Stefan Schmidt from the University of Vienna and Professor Aviv Zohar from the Hebrew University. In this talk, I will quickly present the Lightning Network, which is a peer-to-peer payment channel layer over Bitcoin. I'll first describe the routing algorithms that are being used in this network. Then, I'll present our idea regarding hijacking route by establishing attractive paths. And finally, the potential of this attack in terms of denial of service to the system, blocking pairs of nodes from transacting. The Lightning Network is a promising approach to mitigate Bitcoin's scalability problem, which currently supports only dozens of transactions per second. The nodes in the Lightning Network avoid the overhead of a global consensus for each transaction by committing only a final state to the blockchain. This is done in a secure and trustless way that includes time-based smart contracts, which are called HTLCs. Every pair of nodes locks money on the blockchain, which creates a logical channel for payments. Payments through this channel are simply an agreement on a new division of the locked funds. Blockchain transactions are only used when opening and closing a channel. Thus, when this channel is closed, the last state is being committed to the blockchain as the final division of the previously locked funds. Zooming out, the Lightning Network supports payments between two parties even without a direct channel. By choosing a route, which is a list of channels, the nodes can trigger a transaction. Transaction is an atomic update of the state on all the channels on the route. In order to incentivize the nodes to participate in this process, fees are paid to the nodes along the route. The fee is set and published during the establishment of the channel. When a node wants to send a payment, it uses a routing algorithm that considers the topology and chooses the best route. Best route in terms of fee and other measures that increase the probability to successful completing the transaction. Although this is a relatively young idea, many recent papers discuss payments channel and their vulnerabilities to attacks. As an example, the following attack takes advantage of the concurrent number of payments that a single node can handle. Another paper did a topological analysis of the network, analyzed the route discovery process, and many surveys that examine the field from different perspectives. The attack we present is to strategically create channels with low fees, which attract many nodes to route through them. The attacker then deliberately fails to execute transfers, thereby performing a broad denial of service attack. Nodes eventually, after a very long time, try to reroute the payment, but often end up choosing again a path that goes through the attacker. Essentially, they keep failing to send the payments. In our analysis, we discussed two types of attacks. The first is an attacker that creates new channels in the network. The second is a group of existing nodes that colludes in order to attack the network. Two theoretical results that we obtained show that on the one hand, in the case of the new attacker, it is computationally hard to know where to put the new channels. On the other end, it is also computationally hard to know which of the nodes are the greatest colluding threat. Although it is computationally hard, we proved that it can be approximated using a greedy approach. We studied the three major implementations of the Lightning Network: LND, Eclair, and C-Lightning, and simulated each node's decision for routes. Each implementation uses parameters slightly differently: the age of the channel, fee, capacity, etc. We base our experiments on the topology of the existing network, which is publicly shared in order to allow nodes to route. The following table briefly summarizes the differences between the routing algorithms. It shows the components in the weights that each channel gets and the protection mechanism that is being used in order to avoid choosing offline routes. We will not go into deeper details here, and they are all discussed fully in the paper. In general, we find that all the three implementations are similarly susceptible despite their slightly different routing mechanisms. The following figure shows the damage potential of this attack on the Lightning Network. We can see that there are 50 nodes in the network that can collude to disrupt transactions between roughly 80% of the pairs in the network. Looking at a single attacker that creates channels, we see that only 15 channels are sufficient to attack around 70% of the pairs. With just 5 channels, the attacker can hijack payments between 60% of the pairs. The next figures try to understand the origin of this vulnerability. We try to analyze the routing algorithms by changing parameters in order to understand more about the impact of each part in the algorithm. The first example is C-Lightning. C-Lightning uses a fuzzing parameter to add noise to the route selection. The graph that we're seeing shows that changing this parameter does little to prevent the attack. Eclair, in turn, finds the top 3 routes and then randomly chooses between them. Our experiments reveal that the attacker can easily hijack all 3 routes. We see here a surprising result. Choosing randomly in this way sometimes makes the attack easier. In the experiment that this figure describes, we compare the attack success rate if Eclair would have chosen the best route compared to the current implementation, which is one of the top 3. This interesting phenomenon could be illustrated here. When an attacker establishes his route maliciously, he can create many different routes that could overcome other honest routes. In this example, the shortest path is of weight 2. Thus, if the source will route to the target only on the best route, then he will be hijacked by the attacker with probability of half. On the other end, if the source will randomize a route out of the top 3, then the attacker will hijack the route with higher probability, 2/3. Increasing the number from which the source chooses will make the attack even easier, to a success rate of 3/4. LND employs a penalty strategy on routes that failed in the past. This figure shows that due to high HTLC times, an attacker can overcome this strategy by creating multiple routes between the attacked nodes. The graph shows that it holds even when choosing parameter differently. The idea behind LND's penalty is to avoid selecting offline nodes. Thus, they imply a penalty that decreases over time. This penalty is generally composed out of 2 parameters: h, which is the penalty decreasing rate in terms of hours, and n, the multiplier of adjusting the time diff to the weight increasing. When the attacker creates multiple routes and delays the failure for a long enough period, then the source node will choose the other route's alternative. Moreover, since senders cannot really know which node along the route had failed due to the onion routing, the source node is forced to punish all the channels along the route. These details are discussed broadly in the paper. The last observation related to the topology of the network. We show that if we will simply choose the placements of attacking channels by targeting high-degree nodes, the attack is still very successful. I want to stress here that we didn't make any adjustment for the specific routing algorithm being evaluated. We also show a baseline of random placements of channels, which is less successful. This result hints that some of the blame can be assigned to the topology itself and not to the routing algorithm. To conclude, there is a security cost to create routing algorithms that are easily hijacked. This paper showed and analyzed a novel attack on the Lightning Network in which the attacker hijacked routes and performed denial of service. We show the damage potential of this attack and the aids of executing it. Last, we show that the network is centralized, in the sense that only 5 nodes route 60% of the transactions, and 10 nodes route 80%. Thank you. Here are our mails. If you would like to contact us with any further